4th Milton Planning Board meeting to opening. First on the agenda will be public comment. This is a point in the meeting when anybody from the public would like to comment on anything other than is on the agenda tonight.
Waiters have up.
Okay. Close public comment, and we're going to discuss to start research and rework zoning amendment 2 that failed in 2019.
Don't we usually do pledge allegiance?
Board of Selectmen.
Is that
So
the?
I'll try to
I just now noticed.
talk so that you can all hear me. You know, the history of this was that this was all prepared in September, October, November of 2018. There was a lot of pushback for regarding certain parts of this proposed zoning amendment that the Conservation Commission and others felt were related somehow to the Mighty Joe campground issue at the time. And so I think our charge here is trying to just locate those 3 or 4 places where that correlation can be taken away. Now, we all don't feel that there was a correlation between Mighty Joe and that, but it sounded and felt like it to others. So they have, I believe, a pretty valid comment. Now, here's what's happened since the zoning amendment failed in March 2019, is that the Conservation Commission formed a committee. They came up with several changes to both the definitions document and the document that changed the body of the zoning amendment. And what you have before you on your desk is actually 2 documents. One is the results of their changes with the town attorney's comments and bubbles to the right. The second document is that body of the zoning amendment language changes that we put to the voters with the Conservation Commission's committee's changes, additions, in green, with Carrie Ann Roman, her comments also to the right in bubbles. My suggestion tonight is twofold. One, we should probably only try to tackle the definitions tonight, and the next meeting try to tackle the body, which is several more pages. By way of explanation, anything in green text is what the Conservation Commission committee changed. It's either their new or their replacement language. It's in green. What is in red are the changes that you sent to the voters last year. Anything that's struck out in black or red is something that you struck out. And again, black text, black normal text, is language that's already in the zoning ordinance and is to remain. The second thing that I'll suggest for ground rules on this is that we focus only on identifying those things that were tied to language that the Conservation Commission and other groups didn't like for various reasons, and try to fix those. I don't believe that there are too many examples of the green language that you have to do. You can talk about it, but I will certainly chime in about whether I think it's either legal. I'm not an attorney, however, I have a long background in land use law, and we can also go back to the town attorney on this when we're done. So, how say you?
Shall we start with the first page, which would be the micro enterprise?
Yes, you can do that. Again, I'm going to say one thing, Mr. Chairman, and that is that even Carrie Ann Roman, and you can read her bubble comment, really is not recommending that this be added, that this use be defined or added to the table of uses, and I concur. It was not in your original language,
No.
and it was not something that they complained about.
According to the attorney, it's gonna be nothing but a legal nightmare, if anything.
Well, that's really what her comments are about.
I would just take that right out there.
Yep. I'd go with the recommendation of the town attorney, strike the whole green.
I tend to agree with it. I look at it as, from an enforcement end of it, as pretty much do whatever you want.
And if I say no, take me to court and prove me otherwise.
And the attorney's telling she couldn't defend him.
Right.
I agree.
And that takes care of page one. Turning to page two, you see there's a lot of green language here, and it's specifically about defining campgrounds, adding a definition of resort, adding a definition of recreation facility high and low impact, and you actually worked on language earlier, or late last year, on this. We didn't quite make the time to get it onto the onto the warrant as a zoning amendment, but my suggestion with regard to recreation facility high and low impact, which really should be called recreational use outdoor high impact and recreational use outdoor low impact. Those are the things you were working on. I suggest you don't use these and substitute the ones that we were working on. Going back up again to adding a definition of resort. Well, I wouldn't add the definition unless you had it in your table of uses. Right now, you do not have a resort use in your table of uses. So why would you define it?
And once you define it, that opens you up to having one.
Mr. Brown?
As I think I remember, the point that Bruce is raising is one that was brought up when the mega dump was being considered.
Yes.
Yep.
Without it being there, it's not there.
Exactly. It's not allowed.
I mean, you could add it to your table of uses and then say not permitted in all zones but one. But I don't recommend that. If it's not in the table of allowed uses, then it is not an allowed use in zoning.
I agree with that.
So, we're saying strike resort?
Yep.
Now, it's my opinion with regard to the committee's attempt at defining campground. When you look at the zoning ordinance as it defines campground today, it's a very short definition, and I do agree that it needs to be worked on. But I don't believe that we need to use this definition verbatim. I think that is going to take a little bit more work. If you're amenable, I can bring you a couple of 2 or 3 campground definitions.
It's an awful wordy definition for campground.
Well,
I mean, God almighty.
you're getting set up in this, for the second half, which by breaking out resort as a different thing,
Yeah.
allows, so this built environment is kind of a
Well, and there's nothing in there about those buildings that they've already got. What do they call them? Them things on wheels?
The block models.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's, I think, maybe an attempt to eliminate that, but however, the attempt to find by the town, by the state is campers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
recreational vehicles.
Yeah. But they're campground owned as opposed to people owned, and
Yeah.
that's not in here.
Yep. Campgrounds are distinguished from resorts, which,
Well, it says,
Go ahead.
users provide their own temporary dwellings,
yeah, see, that's eliminating
eliminating
something that's legal in the state.
But is it, that's just saying that the campground can't have their own park models, you have to bring your own in.
Yeah.
You're saying the state,
Recognize them as a recreational vehicle.
right, so if you or I owned it, we could bring our
Right.
park model in there, but
But you can't leave it there.
if you're the owner of the campground, you can't buy them and rent them out.
That's
Is
basically what it
That's
is.
what
what
this
that
says.
definition is
The
saying.
sentence before that says that even if you do own it, you can't leave it there.
Yeah.
Well, then that's gonna open up a can of worms
Can I,
because,
give you a little bit more pertinent facts here? Further on in the language, where you were trying to establish special exception criteria for campgrounds, there was language, I'm gonna find it here, that spoke to, I'm almost there. Here's what it said. This is the language that you came up with last October. This is special exceptions for campgrounds. 1, camping cabins, which are defined as a building or other structure that is 400 square feet or less in area, which shall include a yurt, but does not include a tent, recreational vehicle, tourist rooming house, manufactured housing, or manufactured home, are limited to 15% of the total allowable camping sites. Any such wait a minute, so that, don't read the green stuff right now. And it says, there should be no manufactured housing and manufactured homes in campgrounds. All accessory structures must meet setbacks and other applicable development regulations. And there shall be a minimum 250-foot vegetated screen buffer from campsites to abutters' property boundaries. Those were the 4 special exception criteria that you wanted the voters to say yes to. And that handles that issue about not allowing, in the definition, not allowing any park models or things that are not brought in by you. The special exception that the zoning board would consider would have to say that we will not do more than 15% of these park models. So I think that addresses it, and I don't think you need to have that in your campground definition.
Well, the comment to the right is, this definition seems to conflict with the special exceptions for campgrounds,
Yeah.
which contemplates permanent cabins.
Well, it contemplates a limit, an upper limit on camping cabins.
now, there's people now that leave their campers there year-round, so telling me every campground, any campground that has a camper in it goes, they have to pull it off every year.
That's the issue with, that's one of the several issues with this definition that needs to be, it needs
You
to be.
get on the
worked on.
campground this winter, see how many campers are left there year-round. And if they're not registered, they're assessed for taxes.
Right.
So, we're gonna lose money on that project.
I thought that was the reason for keeping them, because we did get taxes off of them.
Yeah. So by this,
Yeah.
They have
it
to
doesn't-
regular pull
they
them
couldn't leave
off.
them there.
Right.
But correct me I'm wrong.
I will.
Regardless.
That came out real quick.
Of what this says or how it's voted in, if it's voted in, the existing campground is already existing. Right? So it's not gonna correct any issues or concerns people have with the existing
I think that
campground.
was a point that we made
All
before
this
the vote.
is
too.
going to do is for new development.
Yep. Or,
So I think
you
we,
know, as we ruled, that's the code enforcement officer and the planner, we ruled that any expansion of the campground, either by area on that lot or by the number of campsites, needed a special exception. And that's why we put them on the road that they were put on. So I hope you understand that. Let's say somebody buys this campground from the current owner and says, you know, look at all this acreage I've got here. Let's try to do this again. We're gonna come in and we're gonna ask for a special exception because we're doing a significant expansion. You know, knowing that your zoning ordinance does allow minor expansions of non-conforming and grandfathered uses, which is what they are. And, you know, we were right in saying, you know, you want to add, how many was it? 117 campsites or
Yeah.
something like that? And a significant area of land that had never been developed. That was a significant expansion, not a small expansion, which is quite a bit different from the site plan amendment that you considered and went through, because that was not significant expansion and was allowed by the zoning ordinance. And that was a legal opinion that came from the town attorney. So, did I answer your question?
yeah.
You're talking too much again.
Then the next two, we've got the 55 decibel again.
Well, my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, on that one is that we don't use this language at all.
Yeah.
You have already worked on those two definitions and come up with a very good draft that one member of the conservation has seen, and he has a couple of recommendations on, which is good. And I'm asking you to replace that language with those.
Okay. I'm just looking at that, and that'd be a nightmare to monitor. A nightmare.
Yes.
They have to have whatever you need to measure sound, and so does the town. And you don't tell me you're gonna be out there every weekend.
Well, you took that decibel level
Yeah.
threshold out
Yep.
of yours.
Larry's got a question.
Noise, please.
Larry, sorry.
In addition to the decibel level, you also need to consider the irregular nature of the sound and the hertz, the subwoofer school of design. As for example, the cars, not the motorcycles, which are exempt, but cars that can be heard a mile down the road with that thumping bass.
Yep.
Lucky we don't have any elephants, that wouldn't be either.
And we're leaving the campground thing as it is? The campground definition, we're leaving that as it is?
I think we're gonna get another
Yeah.
option.
We're gonna go over. We'll strike this one and we'll submit something else.
Oh, okay.
So you will get 2 or 3 alternative definitions that have been used in different jurisdictions.
This much fun out of it.
Just so you'll get an idea on the most standard definitions for campgrounds that would replace the older one that we have. On on page 3, even though there was nothing here from the committee for changes, there is a change that was made by the town attorney. Two of them, in fact. One of them was that she indicated that the aircraft takeoff and landings as an accessory use shouldn't have that language that's crossed out there, and I am saying that where else would we put this? Because you can't put it in your use table. The only thing you can put that it is that it's allowed as special exception or as a permitted use. I'm gonna find it.
I'm wondering about the planes with water skis on them that land on the lake.
It's
Is
not
that-
private, it's
Huh?
state-owned. State regulates that.
Yeah.
If you turn to page 4 of the other document, that's the use table. Under F, transportation, communications and utilities. The first one, it says aircraft takeoffs and landings as an accessory use is only allowed as a special exception in the industrial commercial zone and in the low density residential zone.
Page 3, this one.
Where in what you sent to the voters, you added a special exception in the industrial commercial zone. That's the only change you made. So going back to the definition, I guess I'm recommending that you keep the language that's crossed out.
Even though the attorney said strike it?
Yeah, that was stricken by the town attorney.
But you want to put it back in?
I don't see where it hurts. It doesn't do anything wrong. All it does is explain that the owner of the land where the aircraft takeoff and landing accessory use would happen, it would be considered valid and permitted accessory use only after review and approval of a special exception by the zoning board of adjustment. Upon satisfactory proof of meeting the specific criteria for that use. So, this is the appropriate place to say that.
Okay.
I agree.
So I can't land my plane now.
Can't on private land,
My land.
unless you have permission.
Pease tries to land.
The second thing that she's stricken is under public utilities.
Yep.
She, again, my argument here is that the town has the ability to tighten up the definition of a public utility if it so wishes, and not be bound simply by RSA 362:2 as amended. You can add that to the definition, but she's striking everything that you agreed to there with regard to public utilities, where you said they include establishments and facilities that are supported by and or used exclusively by the public or nonprofit organizations. An example of organizations that tout themselves as a public utility are quasi utility companies that put up solar and wind power, and they're not bound by the Public Utilities Commission rules. And that's a dangerous thing if a town makes an agreement with a utility that's not truly a public utility by definition. So that's why I recommend that you keep the language, but add "and as defined in RSA 362:2 as amended."
If I recall a couple couple of 3 years ago, we had a group come and they wanted to put a power thing in the river
Yes, right, yeah.
to generate electricity. And
I think we already got into one of those agreements.
I think we already, we said
At the
okay,
landfill.
but, huh?
We got into one of those agreements in the landfill.
Well, you know, my point on this one is that when, a public utility by definition can come to a town and invoke that, the statute that says that we don't have to be reviewed by the planning board. And I think that's a disservice to the public that deserves a public hearing at the very least on this. And the town deserves the ability to review a site plan to make sure that everything's gonna be built correctly and not affect the public health, safety, and welfare. So the big example of this was the fact that even the one that went on the former landfill here did not go to the planning board for non-binding review, and it should have. It absolutely should have. I was not the town planner here then. That's an abrogation of what should have happened. And any other proposals that come, that are slated to go on town land, really should come to the planning board at the very least for non-binding review. And there's a statute that says non-binding review, your comments are non-binding, but they should show you the site plan. There should be a public hearing. I can't remember the citation right now, but I think it's 67451 maybe. But when one of these utilities, and you notice I'm not saying public, comes and says, we want to put a solar farm on a privately owned piece of property, then that has to go to the planning board for sure for binding review and site plan approval. And there were companies that had corresponded with certain officials that are no longer here that sought an opinion that said that they didn't have to come to the planning board. That's all been settled. And the answer is they do. So that's the reason why you want to have this definition like this, so that you you'll be able to make a decision, Mr. Code Enforcement Officer, or Mr. Planner, or Mr. Town Administrator. You can make a zoning determination that that group over there is or is not a public utility. Because when you do say they're a public utility, it affords them much more flexibility in doing things without any public oversight.
Keep it.
So privately owned, like that thing on the landfill, they own it, right?
They own what?
That solar farm.
They own the infrastructure, I believe, yes.
Okay. So we wouldn't call that a public utility because it's privately owned?
I'll say yes, and then I'll tell you yes, because it's yes, but it's yes because that group is not a public utility.
Right.
They're not.
Okay.
They try to kind of skirt it a little bit and make you think they are, but they're not.
I didn't know that. I
And
thought
is
they
that
were.
the same group that wants to put another solar farm in the old baseball field area?
I believe it would have been, yeah.
I don't think there isn't any real
No.
initiative to do that now that's before anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so we leave that text in there?
Yep.
Why would we not still delete the or nonprofit organizations part of that? And leave it at private, public utility is a public utility, period.
What words are you suggesting striking?
Or nonprofit organization.
You could. You could strike that. Because they're the public too.
Wait a minute. Does anybody want to strike that shot cloud phrase?
I mean, if they're the public too, they're already covered.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
So it's redundant.
yeah,
Yep.
strike it.
And that's it for that, for the definitions document. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I did say at the top of the meeting that I suggested we didn't do this next part or start it, but I guess you could if you wanted to. It's up to you.
What, making the changes, or?
Yeah, continuing on with the body, the language of the zoning ordinance.
Sure, I don't see why not. Does anybody disagree?
The first explanation for the changes to the table of principal uses that were made by the committee is on page 2, where they say that they consider the use of the zoning board of adjustment in special exceptions to be a matter of checks and balances in governance, and I'm going to tell you that that's not what the state enabling laws say is the job of the zoning board of adjustment, period. So that's incorrect and leads you down a dangerous path that we've been on here in Milton for a long time.
It's just one board's opinion. That's all that is.
Right, and my opinion is based on what the statute says.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they've done is they have looked at this table of uses and they have changed some uses that you either said were no longer going to be permitted or that they were going to be permitted as a use allowed by right with a P, and they've changed those back, some of those back to special exceptions. And in other cases where a use is not permitted, we moved them to be less restrictive with either a special exception or a permitted use allowed by right. So you can see where they've done this. In the table, wherever it's black, that's the way it is today in the zoning ordinance. Wherever it's red, that's what you were proposing in your change, and wherever it is green, that's the change that the committee made. So I want to call your attention on page 2, the first part of the table, to manufactured housing subdivision. This is not a committee change. This is a comment from the town attorney who says that she knows that this is existing today, but requiring a special exception for a mobile home subdivision violates RSA 674-32 if your standard subdivision does not require a special exception in the same zoning district. So this should be deleted. Now, what, you can't just delete the SE. You have to allow this use in some district in your town, especially if you're gonna leave it in the table.
Exactly.
And so, my suggestion would be there, that you discuss allowing it in one of the districts. Now, the district that I think is probably the one that's the one that you may want to do this, would be the low-density residential zone.
Well, that's one way to store up a horse.
Remember, there's a difference between, and I'll explain this to you too, there's a difference between a mobile home park, which is one piece of land,
Right.
and you pay a monthly fee to keep a mobile home in that, on that one piece of land, owned by someone, not you, and a mobile home subdivision. Mobile home subdivision subdivides out lots on a larger tract. The lots are usually smaller than is allowed by conventional subdivision. A lot of times it's 50 by 100 or 100 by 100 feet. The people buy those lots and they own them. So it is a quasi-conventional subdivision for either mobile or manufactured housing.
So
The
if we,
question is, what do you want to do with this?
well, subdivision, we don't have anything in mobile, any definitions of requirements in site plan or otherwise, so we'd have to add that too also, right?
And we did.
We did?
Yes, we did, because we added it as a special exception. It was a special exception, and I call your attention to page 8, where you added language for the criteria for special exceptions for manufactured housing. I guess it's for manufactured housing parks, but that should be subdivisions. Hold on. The jury is still out. I think that was supposed to say subdivisions, everybody. Make that pen and ink change.
Yeah.
Can you give us the number, please?
Page 8.
No, I
number
know
10.
that. Where?
Number 10.
Number 10.
You're
Thank
just gonna
you.
cross out where it says park. I
Yeah.
don't know why it said that.
Number 10 or number 8?
Number 8's the one that says park, yeah.
1.
Okay, that's what I was after. Thank you.
And there, I will change that word throughout the language too. Subdivisions.
And if we're still on 8, let's go down to number 3 and read the green.
How are you gonna keep it free of insects?
I don't know.
Chemicals. That's how you do it.
Conservation Commission wants us to spray chemicals. Just wanna get that right.
That's what they're saying right here.
I know.
Rodents, insects,
Yeah.
other pests, harmful to man. Yeah. Yep.
Not by the water.
Well,
So we can't have any boa constrictors or?
Well, if you get them, then they can take care of the insects and the rodents.
And some of the campers.
It's environmentally safe.
Sorry.
I have no comments.
I have a question on this manufactured homes. And of course it's subdivision, but across the street from me is a manufactured home,
Yeah.
okay? It's stick-built, it's a 2-story building,
Yep.
you know, it's a real house.
Yeah.
It's just built in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah. But that's,
No.
as
Is
long-
that kind of thing that we're talking about, or are we talking about mobile homes that?
a subdivision, say if you wanted to put in 50 units,
Uh-huh.
but you're gonna sell the land, that would be a subdivision.
Yeah,
Mobile home parks, they usually go in, they lease the lot.
Right, yeah, I understand that, yeah.
But, I mean, they're allowed on any, mobile homes are allowed to be built on, or placed anywhere in the town. As long as they meet the setbacks and have a well and septic.
Yeah.
But Bob's specific question, I think, was what's the difference between a manufactured house
Yeah.
and a mobile home? And the answer is
Still free.
that the mobile home is completely self-contained with all of the utilities that are needed, like a furnace and a water heater, things that in a regular home would be brought in later and put in your basement or somewhere else, that it doesn't come with it. And it's on
It's on
permanent
wheels.
wheels too, a permanent axle.
Yeah.
So those things make a mobile home. Manufactured house is exactly what you said. It can be built either completely or in halves in a warehouse somewhere, and then put on a flatbed truck or temporary axles, and it doesn't have all of the utilities
Right.
that are needed in it. They have to be added. So that's called a manufactured house.
Well, we get, I call them modulars. And they come in on a trailer and they're wood.
Yeah,
Manufactured, well, I call it, even the manufactured housing to me is a mobile home. And that comes on a steel frame with wheels, permanent axles.
Right.
That's the difference.
So one is mobile and one isn't.
Right.
Mhm.
Once you get to take the mobile off, the modular off the truck, it's set it, it's anchored to the foundation, and you can't pull it off, you put
Right.
it back on that truck.
right.
Whereas the manufactured, you just put the axles back on the wheels and down the road it goes.
Mhm.
Mobile.
Mobile. Well, that's gonna, the notion people don't like to hear anymore, that's why they're called manufactured. It's in the zoning too, and the definitions, it's manufactured homes.
Some of the tiny homes, though,
Yeah, that's the,
are not metal-based. Although they are available to move
Mhm.
and designed to move. But when you take it off the trailer part, it is no different than that modular.
Mm.
Now, some of them are more like trailers, but,
Yeah.
but not all of them. And they have some pieces of the stuff added later, the furnace.
Yep.
Okay, and they may or may not have, you know, septic. They may or may not have. That's about it.
Yep.
And we're going to be facing those at some point.
And I think when we get to that, I don't know we don't have a minimum size for housing. And who really, if they're gonna put one on a lot, they have to own that lot, and they have to meet all the requirements of a house. But it's the ones when they wanna bring them in and set them up as auxiliary housing next to an existing house. And that's where the problem's gonna come in.
It's a she shed.
I'm so confused.
Mr. Brown?
Well, the present median price house in the great metropolis of Rochester to our south is $166,000. A person thinking in the number of mobile home communities in that fair city might draw a correlation there. The manufactured or factory-built housing frequently uses 2x6 wall stud construction with half-inch sheetrock, and the only limitation is the angle of the roof for tilt-up tends to be at 412 rather than a higher pitch, and even on the second floor cape, occupancy space is reduced because it tends to be truss rather than stick tilt.
Yep.
The utilities as to The panel board for electricity and heating system may also be included, even though it is brought into site and not on a trailer frame.
Thank you. So we'll get any more issues on this manufactured housing? I think we,
So,
go ahead.
I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but does this mean, I'll call it a tiny house, I guess.
Yeah.
Somebody could come in and do a development of manufactured housing, a manufactured housing subdivision and put tiny houses on every lot? And that would fall under this section 8?
I don't know.
I think the life safety code has minimum requirements for
Yep.
living space, and they don't meet it. And Brian can expand on that.
I think it's 760 square
Yeah.
feet. I'm pretty sure it sounds about right.
So if they're under that, you're not giving them a building permit to
No.
bring one on.
Okay.
We'll build one.
Right.
Now, she has a comment, I don't know which one it pertains to, but says this isn't enforceable.
That's the pests one.
Yeah, that's it.
Huh?
That's the rodents, insects, and pests.
Yep.
There is it's a really light little line
Ah, yes, there is.
that connects.
Yep, I see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
She says get rid of the roads and,
Yep.
yep. I agree.
See
I
ya.
don't know where you've gone to.
But we're still in the manufactured housing on the 3.
Eight.
with the-
8-3.
Shall be
Bottom
free
of
of
three.
rodents, insects, and other.
Page 8.
You've gone to page 8.
So the green is what's unenforceable.
Right.
Well, the red was too.
Yeah.
Red ones come,
You know,
yeah, the bottom half of that.
here's what I'd like to say about this issue is that it really doesn't have anything to do with the objections that they had for the voters to vote yes on this. Some of the things that you're looking at are an attempt by the committee to do other changes to the ordinance that they were not objecting to. I don't know if you're following what I'm saying.
Oh, I hear you.
And
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You know, you can choose to bypass some of this if you wish.
I see, yeah.
Actually, you were on page 10.
Right?
Page 8 in our books, but
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mine is printed differently than yours.
Oh. Oh, I see.
Oh, you get the adult version, do you?
horizontally instead.
I get it.
Okay, that's why.
But now you can see why I was confused.
Yeah.
I'm looking for what you're talking about. I can't find it anywhere.
Help him, Ash.
That's language that was added, and it really has nothing to do with the
Exactly.
core objection, which had to do with you know what.
Campgrounds. Yep,
And so
we've addressed that.
if you don't see a need to make this change, I would, I would reject it and cross it out.
Let's do a stat on it where you just leave it as it was.
Well, but there, the lawyer has deleted that piece and it was put back in slightly differently by the Conservation Commission. So, Bruce, when the lawyer made the comments, did she have the green as well?
She didn't add any green.
No, did she have the green?
Yeah, she was,
Oh, yeah, she had the green,
She had the green.
yes. And in fact, her comment on the thing you've been talking about that says, "and ground should be kept free of harmful rodents, insects, or other pests harmful to man," she says this isn't enforceable. Well, so it would not be good for the town to put it into their ordinance if it's not enforceable. Unless you wanna have
Well, that-
insect inspectors.
Yeah, we've got that whole 3 should disappear. Maintain free of vegetation which is poisonous.
So you can't have any foxglove.
Yeah.
Right, so I mean,
Here goes my
originally,
poison ivy business.
originally, what you had agreed to, send to the voters said,
Yeah,
park grounds shall be maintained free of vegetation which is poisonous or which may harbor rodents, insects, or other pests harmful to man, period. That's all you said.
yeah.
All that other crap that was added in there should be taken right out and just kept the way it was.
Should it even be kept at all, though?
I can't see it.
Because how are you gonna, what are you gonna define as
It's poisonous to one person,
I mean-
me.
Well,
any type of vegetation can harbor a rodent, can it?
Yeah.
The
Am I
difference
missing
is,
something
the
here?
difference is, that what you said originally, you're telling them that you shall maintain the grounds free of poisonous vegetation. And then you're saying, here's some of the things that the poisonous vegetation can do. You're not saying, you're not advocating for an insect or a rodent inspector.
But before it said or,
Oh,
we had in there.
Yeah, she crossed that out.
Right, and I'm saying that, or which may harbor, they're talking about the poisonous vegetation may harbor rodents, insects, or other pests harmful to man. They're not saying what the other thing says, that the ground shall be kept free of the harmful rodents, insects, or other pests. There is a fundamental
Right.
difference between the two clauses there.
I think
Yeah, but
to strike the whole thing, from parks right down to all of it.
isn't it saying vegetation which is poisonous? I'm taking
Yeah.
out the green, or vegetation that may harbor rodents, insects, or other pests,
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right,
is what we said before.
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
So any type of vegetation can harbor insects
yeah,
or pests.
yeah,
Take it out then.
yeah.
Yeah, I eliminate 3. Larry?
Anecdotal, my wife's mother lived in a wonderful mobile home community out in San Francisco area, and with high slopes, wonderful ivy with leaves about the size of your hand, called by the locals rat ivy.
Didn't take much.
And because it was lush and thick and about 4 inches off the ground. Rat ivy.
So what are we saying? We're gonna strike 3?
Strike 3.
Yeah, strike
It's
3.
entirety.
Strike 3, you're out, right?
Yeah, that's it. So where were we going from there, Bruce? Up page 11? Or would you,
But we never finished the table, right?
well, the table, if it's,
I don't think we got past the
Yeah, you
first.
never finished the
Yeah,
table.
we did.
We get,
Page
we
eight.
get jumped to
You're right.
page 8
We
because
got
we were looking
sidetracked.
at something and I don't even know
oh,
what it
that's
was.
right, yeah. How'd we get up there?
We were at manufactured housing subdivision, that area. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Before we got sidetracked.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're back to next one's micro enterprise.
Yeah.
I think that should.
Don't we need to make a decision on permitting manufactured housing subdivision? In one of the,
Right.
Due to
one
the
zone,
lawyer.
yeah.
that's
Because that's
where
what we went up there to look
Yeah.
at, right?
and then we get,
So that should be, we could permit it in LDR, and that would cover us.
You could, right. And by the way, the park, the one above it,
Yep.
can remain a special exception. If that particular RSA only wants to make sure that the municipalities don't, I'm not thinking of a word,
Not segregate, but,
single out.
Yeah, that's.
Basically, yeah.
That's a good.
Discriminate?
Discriminate.
Discriminate.
That's the word we're looking for. This is-
Way to go.
The state law wants to make sure that there's no discrimination about multiple housing types that may go on subdivisions. So
Right.
they said that if your subdivisions can be a permitted use allowed by right, which they are, just about everywhere, I think, you have to have that as a permitted use, the manufactured housing subdivision.
Yeah.
So that would have to change to a P
Yeah.
in at least one district. It's up to you whether you want to add it to others, but the housing park can be a special exception.
Right.
Manufactured P. Get it.
And on the rooming house, they added special exception under low-density residential?
No, that's what we propose.
That's what
did.
we propose.
We proposed,
Yeah.
okay.
Get rid of micro enterprise.
Micro enterprise? Please refresh me, what does that mean?
That
We don't
was,
know, that's why we're.
That's why we lined it out.
Oh,
That was the definition we eliminated
Yeah.
in the beginning.
Get rid of
Okay.
that.
The lawyer said it's basically gonna allow anything not be defendable.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
So we just eliminate micro enterprise out of all of them.
Wait,
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
One thing that micro enterprise does do, as opposed to microbrewery, is it accounts for the, I'll say, proliferation of businesses which are more and more involved with the internet for physical package commerce and with telecommuting for outsourced employment and home offices that are not a dentist, doctor, or lawyer. And on that basis, it expands the opportunities for traditional home occupation without winding up with a schlocky buy and sell made in China. Yes, grandma makes it in her own basement.
Yep.
So,
And the attorney's opinion was the definition of what it is. Virtually any type of use, so as long as it has low impact, or is going to be a huge burden on the ZBA to figure out. So, and maybe if it was reconfigured, so it was,
Nah, I get rid
Well.
of it.
Michael, no room for it?
Throw it out, way out.
Well, the town attorney was requesting additional money from the town there in that comment, for sure. And I will say that her most important thing to say is that the way it sits, it's no good. And then she says it needs a lot more time and work to implement in uniformly, legally, and as intended. So I'm saying that you might take this up again, but right now, I wouldn't use this definition because the town attorney said that it opens up virtually any type of use, and it's gonna be a huge burden on the ZBA no matter what they decide. And the courts will probably get most of them. That'll cost the town even more money.
Are there any communities in New Hampshire that have that in their zoning that you're aware of that?
Not that I'm aware of, but the board can tell me to do some research and come up with some alternative definitions for this, and
That's a
maybe
good
we could
idea.
put it back in the.
I bet Littleton does.
What?
Littleton.
Oh. Why don't you research it then? Mr. Board?
What's that?
Can we can we
Squirrels.
research that? Can we have,
Sure.
please research that one?
Wanna look something up, something close to it?
I
We'll go
already
for it.
lined it out, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not getting what you're saying.
Other towns that would have something similar to that.
So you would like me to do the research?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
It's already gone an hour longer than I thought it was gonna go.
You can stop anytime you want.
Stop it. Hey.
Yeah, we are at the end of a page now, so this will be,
Boy, these guys are willing tonight.
From the government, I'm here to help.
We did the first part of the table.
Yeah. So next on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
That was quick.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
My attention span is not good tonight.
I'll second it.
My attention span?
It's moving for the minutes, but
Before you go on to that, I'd like to remind you that mark your place in
Yep.
the document where we stopped, and make sure you bring it with you next time. We'll put it in your binders.
It doesn't leave.
can we leave it in our binders?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you could review it at home when you're sitting on the throne or something, and,
That's a bad thing.
and jot down some thoughts about whether you want to do something or don't want to do it. Again, the only thing I would say is that really, unless it really makes sense to make a change where it didn't affect the no votes,
Right.
you might want to not consider it. But there are some things that might work, and so you could do that advanced homework if you want.
I can email it to you guys.
So on B though, did we get rid of all the little SEs that are in green?
I don't think we got to B.
No,
No, we didn't. We stopped.
we stopped today.
What's the date today?
Save it.
And you made the motion for the minutes and I seconded it, but
I know, before that happened.
And then I interrupted.
We're doing good
So I've got a
tonight.
second on the minutes. Do I have any comments? Not hearing any.
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Other business?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I did want to bring it to the board's attention that, two things really. Thing one, I hope is quick, and that is that you've all seen the slow progress for the construction of the Exit 17 gasoline diesel convenience store. The town did ask them to update their schedule of construction, and they did that, and now that's fallen by the wayside. So, as you know, your consulting engineer has been inspecting the installation of things that would affect the public safety and welfare off the site. That's stormwater management infrastructure and other things. He has done his due diligence, and he and I have talked, and we agree that those things have been installed to the point where the only thing needed from him now is a final inspection. Once they finally get done, whenever that might be. And so I requested additional escrow money from the owner. And he did say yes, but I don't know if
Yes.
he has gotten you the check. So what I did was, we looked at outstanding invoices from your consulting engineer, added those up, and then added an additional amount for that final inspection, and that's the end of it. So that's the only thing we'll be getting from Scott Borsier, is that final inspection. The SWIP inspection reports continue to be filed whenever it rains or snows, and on an interval basis beyond that. So the only thing I can't tell you is if it'll ever get done.
Well, I do know, like, when they finally ran the power source into the building. That was done last week.
Yeah.
And the trenches for the wire lighting has been put in. And I got a call from the sign guy, and I gave him a sign permit, but he lost the drawings. I'm the only one who's got the drawings now.
Oh my
All right, so
gosh.
that's the update on that one. The update on the site plan review that you approved for the old fire station, there is a kind of a glitch here. The owner, through his engineer applied for a driveway permit from the state to have a driveway up here on Route 125. Your approval precluded that from happening. And I have been communicating with District 6 Representatives Roger Appleton and Kerry Locke and others about this idea that, well, you're right, the DOT has the authority to review and approve driveway permits, but their authority stops at that front property line, which is also the right-of-way line. And beyond that, you, the planning board, have the authority to approve what happens on that site in a site plan review and approval, and you've already done that. And you said, no access. That's what you said. And that's what I told the state. And their response to me initially is that we don't see anything that could make it so that we would not approve it. And I said, okay. I said, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make sure that the planning board is briefed on this tonight. And they asked that I bring back whatever you say. I'm not asking for any decisions, but you have an approval that shows a plan that rips up all of that pavement and loams and seed it. So you did that for 3 reasons, I think. One, you wanted to reduce the impervious surface on that, which helps that little stream that goes by there on the right.
Mhm.
You wanted to give some lawn to the people who live in this place. And thirdly, you told him no access from up there, that all the access was gonna be on Charles Street. Finally, I'm going to tell you that the plan that they submitted to the DOT was not your approved site plan. It was a previous draft that you saw that showed the pavement there. DOT knows this now, and they're not happy. The cooperation and coordination piece between the town of Milton and DOT District 6 is working, but they really want to know whether, if the developer comes back and says, I want to amend my site plan now because I want to have a driveway on Route 125. The question is, do you still feel the same way that you did when you approved the site plan with no
No.
access on 125?
Absolutely not.
And that's what I want to tell DOT tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
No access.
Need a motion and a vote?
I
Yes,
agree.
sir.
That
You'll
was
take one.
discussed in great detail. I
Mhm.
think we,
This is just
We
backdoor,
did,
this is
we
just a
did.
backdoor action.
yep.
Yep.
So we stand by what we said.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Tear it up, loom it, and seed it.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason for having that done, is so the people down below wouldn't receive that extra water and everything else.
Mr. Brown.
I have very little sympathy for the game of mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy. Secondly, the lighting,
I don't
the
understand
lighting is deficient. It is straight out spotlight.
So do I have a motion to stand by our site plan?
I'll make that
Stand
motion.
by site plan as,
All those in favor?
I'll second, aye.
Yes, second.
got a second.
Yes, we got a second.
Okay.
Just a second, I lose my
Oh,
mind.
just-
I don't want- Larry.
A question of the informed wisdom of the group. The code enforcement officer would not be able to issue a certificate of occupancy to a plan that did not meet its specifications.
Correct.
That's correct.
I guess I'm unclear, so if you can help me out here. So the plan that was submitted was one that was done prior to what we approved, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did they get this plan from? Directly from him? Shouldn't have come from us?
No, they
No?
have their own.
They have their own, okay.
copies of the sign.
The other
Okay,
question-
that's what I wanted to
The other
know.
question is, did they submit it before we made that decision?
No,
So it
so
was
he
after.
intentionally,
no.
You
Oh
sure?
my
intentionally.
gosh.
You're a generous
Because sometimes-
man.
Concord sits on stuff.
Has it been inspected that he has the right number of bedrooms?
Yeah.
Yeah, they told me when when it was, when the application was submitted.
So this is a
Long
conscious
after you,
effort
approve.
to circumvent what we said.
Yes.
Conscious decision by his lawyers and staff.
We spent half the meeting sitting there describing everything, and he was saying yes to all this.
So,
Like I said, when he bought that property, he said a whole different story to the Board of Selectmen than what he's done.
Yeah.
so he
It's
stood
just
there.
But we have
going
to put a
prove
stop to it.
himself.
So what gives me the belief that he'll uphold anything he stands there in front of that podium and tells me?
Well, that's why I'm asking, have we checked to make sure the bedroom situation is exactly what he said?
Yeah, it is.
It is, okay, thanks.
Not that he'll be able to live in it, because he won't be able to get an occupancy permit.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry. I just have to have it out loud.
Oh, I hear you. I'm good with that.
You all set with your comments? I only leave one thing
I
left.
know,
That was
I
good
have
information. Thank you.
one, I think,
Okay.
okay, and maybe I have to do it from out there, or I can do it from in here, but the legislature has passed legislation that creates an appointed board with the authority to overrule all town boards instead of the court. Now, so the appeal of any decision goes to this board. It's an appointed board. It was crammed into the budget bill by the Senate, because they can do stuff. Larry knows that probably too. They have these
Put
weird
multiple
rules.
things, yes.
It went into the budget. The governor did not veto the budget, that budget, because this was sort of like the only objectionable thing in there. The purpose is, as I said, is to overrule restrictive zoning, because restrictive zoning in the eyes of people who are interested in affordable housing is the target. Okay, so like the little mobile home thing that we talked about, that would certainly fall into that category. The governor did promise, because there was some level of opposition to this when it came up, standalone bill. Not enough to capture a majority in one of the houses. I guess there's only one house in the House.
Yep.
But then, as I said, it was slid in, and there isn't any real mechanism to yank it out right now, regardless of what promises were made. So,
That's just gonna create another whole can of worms.
yeah.
Oh, good.
You don't like their decision, then you take it to court. So now we've added one more step before it gets to court.
It still, it doesn't go to court.
No.
It goes to this board.
But if,
And if that board, apparently you can appeal, but we've taken out one level of judicial review.
yeah,
Superior.
So it replaces the Superior Court level.
Who appoints this board? The legislature or the governor?
That isn't really clear right now. It's right now the legislation. So you can have a concept, but words matter.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
so the concept is what's there. The pieces haven't been put together.
good.
Okay.
Larry, before we adjourn.
This does fit in with the new federal administration position on the power of the EPA to regulate navigable waters, which has an impact on wetlands and is very good for mining, development, and ranching interests, which we don't have that much in New Hampshire. But the restrictions will be pardon my cynicism, to the detriment of those critical areas now protected, as for example, what used to be a minimum of a 2,000 square foot wetland, which is now a great pile of fill at what will be the eastern exit from exit 17 shopping center. But who keeps track?
But I could have my mini cows.
Okay. I want to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Hi. You guys,
That's the
you
only
have
one I
to
want to
vote.
debate tonight.